Welcome to Nagoya International Airport.
Welcome, Jack Elliott. I am Yoji Nishimura. Arriving refreshed?
Arriving drunk and dead tired.
Excellent. Places to go, people to meet. Mr. Nakamura, president of the Chunichi Company.
Hi.
Mr. Nikawa, vice president. Not in back pocket. It's major insult, like you're sitting on their identity. Mr. Sato,
Sorry.
treasurer.
Hi.
You give them business card in return, please.
I don't have a... Oh,
Mr.
wait a minute
Yamada,
here.
general manager.
Hi.
Mr. Takahashi, he's in publicity.
Hi. Here you go. Collect them, trade them, show them to your friends. There you go. And no sitting on my face.
Hey, everybody. Welcome here to another episode of the XFL Infowars show. And we are coming to you I am here in sunny Japan watching with the WBC Classic on with Japan right now in the sixth inning facing off against America. And Dave is in upstate New York, apparently without the game on. So because apparently it's not widely available. The game is not widely available in the States like it is here in Japan.
Yep.
How you doing, buddy?
I've been following along on Twitter and watching Trey Turner hit all those home runs. So it's been fun.
It's it was funny yesterday because we got out of the house yesterday. It was a nice day and we were doing some traveling and stopped in some relatives. And so we got to the house, we got to relatives' house right around the seventh inning when the rally started. And it felt very much when Japan beat Mexico. For me, I told my wife, I go, man, this has a Cubs winning the World Series vibe.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens here. It's 3-1. We're in the top of the sixth inning. And Japan's been pretty dominant throughout this tournament. So them almost losing that game yesterday, I think served as a good wake-up call for them. But we'll see. We'll see.
I just don't think if the U.S. didn't get a lead early, they just don't have the pitching. They don't have the horses to compete with Japan. And that's
right.
That's gonna be the big difference, I think, at the end.
Well, you know what? Funny you should mention it because when the numbers, so I'm watching the game. Everything obviously is in hiragana, katakana, kanji. I mean, it's just I can't read anything, but I can read numbers. And I was looking at one number, and I'm like, and I just saw the ERAs, and I'm like, ooh, man, this, I mean, Japan has had some really, really tough pitching, but on the flip side is offensively. Very much reminded me of the St. Louis Cardinals back in the 80s, where they didn't have a lot of power hitters, but it was all small ball. And that's how they beat you with singles and doubles.
Well, watching these games when I get a chance, and a few of them were on Tubi and they're on some different streaming services, so I got to watch some of them. But these games reminded me of like sim baseball, when you can do a draft league and you have a pool to pick from, so you have a very good lineup. So it's going to skew where it's more offensive minded because, I mean, let's face it, there's no lineup Trey Turner's ever batting in the 9-hole, ever,
right? Except
this. So it's just one of those things where I didn't expect many 1-0 games. I expected the 7-6, the 5-4s, because there's just too much offense. Just way too much. I mean, Ohtani's hitting 450. I mean, it's incredible. It's incredible.
I didn't realize that, but now, I didn't realize that, but now I'm thinking about it. Yeah, that makes sense because I mean, it seemed like every other at bat he does something. I didn't realize what his average was. And in terms of, I haven't even looked or anything about on base percentage. I mean, the Japanese team is amazing, and right now that I honestly, I'm looking out my window here, and honestly, this is the quietest this town, the little town that I live in, has been in a while. So my guess is everybody's like me in front of the TV with the game on. And they say this is going to be the at least baseball wise, the biggest audience ever for a baseball game.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. I mean, they were hoping. I mean, MLB was hoping was this good because they really want to view this as the World Cup of baseball compared to
Yeah.
soccer. But it is good to see so many countries like this. Is I don't know if you saw the poll. They talked to some players and they MLB players, and they rated winning the World Baseball Classic or winning the World Series, which would mean more to you. And I think it was like 4 out of 5 players said the World Baseball Classic meant more
Really?
than the World Series because
Really?
it's representing their home. It's representing where
Yeah.
they're from. I mean, you can just see. I mean, Mexico. So many of these teams were just so incredibly fun to watch.
Right. And then you saw too with I can't remember who the name, but who did he break his leg celebrating?
Oh, there's Edwin Diaz, and he ended up tearing his knee, and he's out for the year. I forgot the exact term, but he ended up just stepping funny and wrenching his knee, and he's out for the year.
That is just, I mean, only in a World Baseball Classic can you see, I mean, you just think, and then just the tears on his face. It was just a freak accident. But I mean, that just tell you how hard they were They were celebrating that win. And
it was a big win. It's a big win.
Yeah. Yeah. And like the game against Mexico yesterday, huge win. I mean, and also too, people forget the Japanese team. I swear to God, it was earlier in the week. They played their last game here. And to fly to Miami, and obviously I'm sure it was a charter jet. It was first class all the way. But even with first class all the way from Tokyo to Miami, still a long ass frickin' trip. It took me 2 months to get over the jet lag when I got here. Yeah. And I was just flying from Chicago. So and then obviously you're going back the opposite way too, which is a whole nother level of difficulty. So here we are. We're watching, like I said, got the baseball classic on. And the nice thing is everything's in Japanese, so I can mute it because I know I'm not missing anything commentary wise because I can't understand it anyway. So figure this would be a perfect time to talk.
Win or lose, they're not going back tonight. So they're gonna be they'll be in Miami for a few days, and don't be surprised if you have a handful of Japanese players getting contracts when this is all said and done.
Well, it'll be interesting to see who they pick they target, say, for next season, because obviously the season here is already starting. And actually, I'm looking forward. This is my first year living in Japan, so Japanese baseball wise, I still got to get caught up on my J League team here because I've missed the last 2 games, but I haven't followed them online or anything, so I can at least get caught up on the on-demand stuff. Nice. But we're starting here next week with the regular season, so there'll be a lot of in my family. Everybody's a Tokyo Giants fan, so there'll be a lot of Giants games on here with my wife and my in-laws being here, because now our place here is like the place to be because we've got the biggest place. And it's nice being here after 25 years of being away to have family. So it all works out and everything. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Real quick, they still have the Ham Fighters. Is this?
Yeah, the Nippon Ham Fighters.
They still around?
Nippon Ham Fighters up in Sapporo, and they got a new stadium this year, so it'll be interesting to see the new stadium. Yeah, they it's one of the first new ones they've built in a long time too, because there's only 12 teams here. For people who don't know anything about Japanese baseball, there are 2 leagues, the Central League and the Pacific League, with 6 teams each. There is interleague play now, but I mean, for years, much like back home, you didn't have interleague play. So, but it's still, there's couple weeks of interleague play. I would say they need more teams, but the population here is declining. So I can't foresee I don't see room in the market for another team, especially with the dwindling numbers. I mean, this country's kind of aging out, and that's a whole ticking time bomb here for down the road for this place. But it's so I could, and I'm sure there'll always be 6 teams, and we're talking I think population wise, it's about 130 million here. And you're talking by the end of the century about 80 million. So that's a huge drop in population. But you think about it too, man, where we're at technology wise and everything. I mean, the world's going to change so much in the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. The changes we're already starting to see place here. And even here in Japan, I see ads for technology that I didn't realize had been invented. Mm-hmm. So
I mean, in the next 5-10 years, you could see not so much a merger, but you could have interleague play with the Korean baseball.
Oh yeah.
KBO. So I mean, so there's so many things that, I mean, even the Taiwanese baseball league. I mean, there's so many opportunities to do things and not have to force or be having to push a new team somewhere. So
and also China's up and coming too. And the Chinese, I mean, they're Chinese, and it kind of goes to talking about football. Gridiron football is not a global sport, obviously, but you see the World Baseball League, and I mean, there's if you've read the book Gridiron Cup, and I don't think you have yet, but it's very much about a what if, like a World Baseball Classic, and it's just it's a great intriguing idea. It'd be great if we, if we lived in a world where gridiron football was the main sport, and but it's always fun to speculate. But at least with the World Baseball Classic, you think about it, back when we were kids growing up, we didn't have this. So to see this play out, we only knew about Japanese baseball through newspapers and what we read in books. And here we are, third decade in the 21st century. We're watching everything live on TV, via internet or via satellite. It is very cool. It is very cool. I would do, when I sit here at times, to just still kind of marvel as to not only how I got here, but also to just how much the world has changed around me, and the 30 years since I've been coming here. But that's the great thing about, like I said, the internet is a wonderful thing. I was telling somebody yesterday, I can sit here and I can, somebody asked me about, I don't feel like I mean, you're literally half a world away from where I'm at right now, and it doesn't feel like you are. So the technology, the internet, God bless the Department of Defense. They've given us a lot of things in our lifetime, the internet being the primary one. So so it allows us to sit here via video, with our TVs on in the background. And today we're going to look at, the latest news from the overnight. So I didn't sleep very well last night. I just got an alert on my watch indicating, basically telling me, hey, you slept like shit last night. Well, part of the reason why I slept like shit last night was I was getting a lot of flack from people on Reddit, from people on Facebook, from people on Twitter about, let's call them my hot takes and my memes about the XFL, about attendance and everything. And during that whole period, boom, the ratings came out. Tell everybody, I'm going to let you have the first take on ratings, because you can break it down a lot better than I can.
I mean, overall, they were not very good. I mean, the 4 games combined, slightly over 1 million total viewers. It's just, I mean, I don't think anybody expected them to go up, but I don't think anybody expected them to drop this much. I mean, we are literally, from week 1, it was a little over 3 million viewers, to now week 5 with 1 million viewers. So basically you've lost 30% since the first week. And honestly, it doesn't even, when you're getting 200,000 people to watch your game with a rating, is it even worth? I mean, just be honest. Is it worth talking about? Was the game good or not?
Right. Yeah.
Because the people watching it searched for it because they wanted to watch it. Like those are people who wanted to watch it. And I understand. I was reading a lot about people are complaining about the XFL has to find better times. The games are on too late. They have to next year get them on earlier. Unfortunately, it's not that easy because they don't own the time slots. They don't own these
Right.
channels. So whatever agreement or however that agreement works with Disney and ESPN, they basically go, we have this time slot available. So if you want to be on the air, you need to take this time slot, or you can have prime time on ESPN Plus.
Right.
And that's really how it works. I mean, you just don't like, yeah, the game was on Sunday night was 10 o'clock on the East Coast. It was 7 o'clock, but it doesn't matter. That was the time slot that was available to them. Of course, if the 7 o'clock time slot was available, they would have taken it, but it wasn't available. So that's why the game was on at the time it was.
And, and I understand about slotting stuff in for the ratings. And again, I spent way too much time, as probably, I think, said, large part of why I didn't get a whole lot of sleep, because I was just, forget about all the rumors about Trump being arrested. I was worried about XFL ratings. And I'm looking through, and then finally I got up early this morning, and one of the first tweets I saw was from James Larson over at with Pro XFL Newsroom, Pro Football Newsroom, and I got to give him a lot. I always throw shade on the XFL media because I know there's an inherent vested interest in the XFL succeeding, and I understand that. But I tell you what, he called it right. He did not sugarcoat it. These are bad. These are bad numbers, and I got to give him a lot of props for that, because he's the first XFL media person that I've ever heard. And again, this was the first thing I saw, so I'm not. Yeah. But he called it. They're bad. They're bad. I mean, nobody is writing the XFL off right now, but man, we're 5 weeks in now. This is where, and they said during the election, about the Trump base, it's kind of baked in. And so I see these numbers and I see, because each game is televised nationally and each game is played separately. So when I see 1 million, I divide that down to 1/4, and basically it's the same people watching the same games. So you're not even reaching 1 million people. You just have, for lack of better, for 250,000 on each game. Mm-hmm. And most of those are the same. I mean, and so we're they're not reaching 1 million people.
And the same thing with James. He did a really good job last year. He also writes about the USFL as well. So
yeah,
it was interesting comparison because that's where it seems like everybody's going at this point, where the USFL was in their ratings compared to where the XFL. And like I said, we've talked about this before. It's like an apples and orange, because the USFL is there because Fox goes, we want you. We're going to showcase you where we want to. Yeah. And they're getting really good times because the people making that decision write the bill or write the checks.
Yeah, they own it.
So, So it's just, we had discussed before about, is this the point where it bottoms out? I just don't. History tells you they don't go to a point and then from week 6 to 10, then work their way back up again. It doesn't. I mean, we all read the part where once we get through March Madness, when the games are on prime time in ABC, I don't see them going back to that 3 million, because I don't see anybody looking to spend the kind of money mid-season to rebrand it for ABC to really push it. Like I just
Right.
don't, I
Right.
don't see them. And I'll be honest, I didn't have a chance to take a look. For next time, I will find out what NBC and CBS has going on at the same time. I'll be curious of the weeks when ABC did pluck to put it on prime time, what's going on at that time at the other stations. Because they're all planned out. They're all
Right.
mapped out for years in advance on when things are going to be on. So they know when they can take a chance and when they can't, based on what it is.
Right. And there's something else too when it comes to, okay, so everybody's, well, ABC this. And I'm just thinking practically, okay? And I say this because I always jokingly say here in my household, and actually in my extended family now, and I'm the Navy communications officer. I'm the comms guy. And I'm going to use the World Baseball Classic as a good example, okay? When I got here, it took me a while to configure my VPN and get all my services set up. Obviously, I don't, being retired, didn't have to worry about, doing it when I wasn't at work, around my work schedule. So it took time for me to learn. But something I've learned is now we live in an age where everything is digital, everything is streaming. And since up until I moved, I had DirecTV, I had Comcast, and most of America gets their TV through cable or a satellite. Right. If they have if it's old fashioned TV.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Nobody, I don't know what the numbers are, and I'd have to watch the antenna guy on YouTube TV to find out, because this kid does a really good job about cord cutting and everything and explaining the process. But most, if you watch regular TV and if you have cable, I don't know what the numbers are on that, but let's just say that it's at least 50%. Well, then finding FX, finding FS1, finding ESPN is no harder or more difficult than tuning into channel 7, say in Chicago on ABC. It's just up and down the dial. Mm-hmm. Or now you can just talk into your remote and it will pop up.
Yep.
And so this talk about how the numbers are going to be better on ABC, I don't get the logic in that. Maybe I'm just, as an old Navy commander once told me when I was a young ensign, hey, ensign, have you ever thought, maybe, have you ruled out the possibility that you're maybe just completely fucking stupid? And I'm sitting there I'm thinking, yeah, but I just remember for me to watch a World Baseball Classic, I had to go search for the thing. And it was on live local TV that I didn't know about. I don't know. I just find the whole thing, them going to ABC, it'll be easier. I think, I don't know. I don't buy that argument at all.
We'll find out.
We will.
This Sunday's the first ABC game at 3:00 in the afternoon. So
and who's playing that game? I forget.
That's San Antonio at Arlington. So basically rematch of this past week, just flipping homes.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, and those are two teams. Neither team is drawn well at the box office. And attendance as a whole, attendance didn't really fall any further than what it has fallen, but most 90, that's because of St. Louis, and that we understand. But you look at San Antonio, their attendance dropped by half. Yeah. I don't know if, you can blame a lot, but the product on the field obviously might play into it. But and again, I sound very flustered and very frustrated because I would love to be able to sit here and going, hey, things are going great. I know people, bash me and say you're an XFL hater. No, I've never hated the XFL. Always wanted it to succeed. If you listen to the conversation, if people who are listening here think otherwise, go listen to the conversation I had with Brett Forrest, who wrote the book Long Bomb about the XFL. I want spring football to succeed. And even I sat down with Kyle Smith at the USFL project earlier in the week, and we talked. And again, we're both, I mean, during that interview, he had his, his Renegades hat on. I had my XFL stuff probably displaying in the background next to all my other football memorabilia. Nobody wants to see it fail. But I think the owners have really done a disservice to it, because they've pushed, and this is my opinion, I know, and Dave you might think otherwise here, but in my opinion, they have made marketing themselves, meaning Danny and The Rock, it seems to me, number one priority over the players, over the fans. And I hear other things. Well, they didn't have enough time to set up. You had 2 years to set up, and you were given a playbook by Vince McMahon, who executed that playbook very, very well. So, counterpoint. You tell me what I'm missing here.
No, I mean, if you're gonna, I just looking retrospect and looking back to, say, 18 months ago. Yeah. I mean, I think without knowing the exact makeup of each one of these 8 franchises, I think they should. I wish they would have gotten on the ground running in the cities earlier, right, and had a larger push for season tickets and tickets in general. It seemed like, from the outside looking in, like from what we could see from where we all are, is they announced it, and there was an expectation of, you did this before, you'll do it again.
Right.
And it seems like attendance, you got that hardcore, but you didn't attract anybody else. And the thought process from a lot of people has been, once they see it, then these crowds are going to get bigger. Like we saw all that about St. Louis, and I hope this isn't a trend that we see where attendance is going down each game. I'd love to see 50,000 people there, but
right,
obviously the second home game was not the first home game, regardless of numbers you announced. It just wasn't. It didn't have that same sound. It didn't look the same. But I think if they can get through the rest of this year and really dig in, I think one of the opportunities they have is to really, and you hear fans and people talk about it as well, that the teams aren't connecting with the communities. And I think that's right. That's something they need to get out and do. I mean, it's football. People are going to know what football is, and it's selling that. It's finding that niche and selling that into your communities.
You're right.
Maybe it's looking at the price of tickets, because the XFL tickets are very expensive. They're not NFL prices, but it's still minor league football.
Yeah,
and you're looking at $35 to $145. You're pricing a lot of people out. So, I'm not recommending go to the USFL model where it's like you can get a season ticket for $25 because they just want people. It's finding that mix, because their economic platform and base that they need to achieve in these 8 cities is different.
Yeah. And then also too, I mean, you've got to factor in the cost of living, you got to factor in inflation. I mean, but like you said, it talked, about the community. I live in, where I'm here in Japan, we have a second tier soccer team. You go everywhere around here. I don't care if it's down the street to the Coca-Cola machine. There is a Fagiano Okayama poster there. There is a presence of all these little minor leagues here in this town that, again, not having ever not being in the States, obviously, but not really on the ground there, knowing what's going on. I know you're out of position too, but yeah, I mean, it's from what I'm reading, and it's funny because I always joke about social media is not the real world, I've spent a lot of time now on Reddit, and I got to say this much, and this is where I've got to give the folks at XFL Reddit a lot of credit, because their membership, I have, we have Twitter and we have Facebook, and Facebook, I'm here to tell you, is toxic, is all the DMs and all of the I wouldn't say threats that I've gotten, but veiled threats. One person in particular who runs at one of the XFL boards, I had to block him too. I mean, I was not happy with what I saw when before I went to bed last night as to what he did, which was completely uncalled for. But that's a whole nother subject, and I am not gonna open myself up to a subject of a lawsuit by naming him. But needless to say, I blocked him. Twitter's a little bit better. It seems like there's some reasonable discussion. I think you and I have talked about this before. You got fanatics. Well, the hardcore partisan XFL fanatics are on Facebook. On Twitter, it seems to be a little bit more give and take now, and I don't know why that is. But again, it's social media. It's XFL Twitter. It is what it is. But then you go to Reddit, and I tell you what, I have been going through Reddit and seeing what's being discussed. There's some really very good, thoughtful conversations about where the league's at and where it's going. And it was refreshing to read. It's like, and I wasn't going to comment on anything. I was not going to post any of my memes either. I wasn't going to do that because I'm thinking that's not going to add to the conversation. But I think fans, at least those in the Reddit community, are smart enough to see, okay, there's a huge problem here. And they've pointed out, hey, what's Danny? What's The Rock doing? What is leadership doing? How come, again, like you and I sitting here talking, why are we watching this thing implode when it shouldn't have imploded? I mean, version 2 didn't implode. I mean, it was declining, but it wasn't imploding. This to me is imploding. This has, I mean, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think the XFL 3.0 only wishes they had the ratings that the first XFL did at this point, because at least back then people were talking about the XFL. Nobody's even talking about the XFL outside of the echo chambers, like our podcast and on Reddit, on Twitter, or even on Facebook.
Well, and I agree. And we've talked about this, the financial side of this, and I was speaking in an earlier episode about how they had 3 different models. And obviously the model that they're looking at now is not the not good one. And I think right now, if ticket sales aren't what they were expecting, if ratings aren't what they're expecting, then couple things need to happen in the background. Is, do they need a capital call from somebody? And what can they do to minimize or try and lessen the blow of losses the rest of the way? Because I don't think anybody believes that the XFL is in the black after 5 weeks. Expenses don't change. You can figure out what those are, and it's really on. Yeah, I don't see it I don't see it necessarily going away, but I think there's going to be some. I think there's going to be some changes and some looks on how they proceed these last 5 weeks, based on the outcome of the first 5 weeks.
Right.
They're really going to test some people, maybe have some people eat a little humble pie, and really, I'm not saying addressing the financial side, but I just don't think the majority of people who comment on this truly understand the financial undertaking it takes to put this all together, to have 8 different teams in different cities and fully everything they possibly need, and pay all these people and pick them all up and move them 5 times for a weekend and then bring them back, and then just excuse me, just the whole the whole package. And I'm not seeing any new advertisers on any of the broadcasts, so I'm not really sure how that end is going. But
Yeah.
we'll see. Like there's a Saturday afternoons on ESPN, Sunday afternoons on ABC, and I'll be curious on Monday night. It is on FX, but I'm curious on how a Monday night game would go. And obviously, it's based on availability, and obviously, I mean, the DC United must be home this weekend. Like if DC's playing Monday night, obviously the facility is not available Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, and this is the option they had. So,
right.
And at the end of
Yeah,
the day,
because right now, with MLS season, with the soccer stadiums, I mean, there's that issue too, and obviously Audi Field is a good example.
Yep, and I sent you that picture from the Sounders game this past weekend. I'm not sure you can faintly see the football numbers, so they scrubbed that thing well, but you could still see the lines.
Which
made it interesting.
Yeah, groundskeeping has become an art now when converting fields, because in the old days, you see it in the CFL, you still see the soccer lines there and they swap out. I always found that fascinating how they're able to reconfigure a stadium for football so quickly and so easily. Obviously, it takes time. But I mean, it would be, I just listen, a steady 15,000 for each team would be great at this point. Because none of us are expecting, 40,000. It'd be great if each team could get 40,000, but realistically, they're not. And obviously, any talk of expansion is way premature. I mean, relocation obviously is going to have to be talked about for next year, but and I'm sure whatever leases they have, say in Vegas, can be easily broken. With again, money solves a lot of problems. So everybody keeps talking about San Diego, Orlando. I don't know how you fix Orlando. I mean, that's I don't know the market down there very well. I mean, I do, I had a friend, got a podcast buddy of mine who I asked him, "Hey, you going to the Guardians game?" His response was, "Fuck that, I'm not going." So you've got that. Again, Orlando is one of those places. There's a lot of other things to do. It's spring. It's I don't know how you fix Orlando. I mean, there are obviously markets that would, in theory, sound good. One market in particular, I'll throw this out: Tucson. Tucson is Tucson, Arizona. They got a stadium. They've got a couple stadiums you could use, either a minor league ballpark at the University of Arizona ball field. And I've been to a game at the University of Arizona, so that's why I'm just sitting there going, it'd be a nice, February and March in Tucson. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. And there's nothing else competing with I mean, obviously you got the basketball team there, but you also have the college. I mean, I don't know. My take is that a lot more study needs to be done. There are more possibilities. If you're going to relocate teams, some of these untapped markets that, even Nebraska, everybody keeps talking about Omaha. So like the United Football League, and, when they did that, and Randy Snow over at the World of Football podcast is on his podcast this week, and I haven't listened to it yet, is going to do a history lesson on the United Football League. And I'm like, at first I woke up and I'm like, I go, which USFL? Now again, I was just waking up from a bad sleep. I go, which USFL are you talking about? Like, oh, you meant UFL. God, that's another one of those leagues that you scratch your head wondering, what were they thinking? And it just seems to me with XFL 3.0, it has a UFL feel at this point. It just, except in St. Louis. And, but like you said, now did the crowd, I didn't do a deep dive into the numbers, but how did the crowd in St. Louis compare to the first week they were at home? Was there a drop or was it about steady?
They announced 3,000 less, but it looked like it was the number looked between 25 and 30, and they announced 35. Personally, it looked like it was a decent drop off from the first game, but. But as I say, you can announce anything. It really comes down to it. You can really announce whatever you want. Like it's
right. Well, it's something I've learned with you, and also too talking about lessons learned. Before I got on the horn with you here, Arlington Lane with the X Factor show. Him and I were going back and forth on Facebook, and we're talking about streaming numbers because we haven't even really talked about streaming today. But he indicated that the streaming numbers will come out, and I was not aware of this, probably should have been, but I wasn't, that streaming numbers will come out, but they're going to come out within like a month or something. And so Mike, and this sounds I'm going to go all Alex Jones Infowars on this one. Here's my conspiracy theory on this. If the ratings on streaming were good, we would know about it from XFL front office. They would put out a press release, much like they did when they pushed their tequila and their Zoa energy drink into some type of press release. Hey, the numbers aren't out yet, but we're here to tell you our streaming numbers are looking great. But they're not. I mean, again, without knowing, there's NDAs and there's legal stuff and that, but I know this much about, just because you can't tell somebody something doesn't mean you can't tell somebody something. It's, the old adage is, look, I can neither confirm nor deny. It's not so much what you say, it's just how you say it. And there hasn't even been that. So that tells me that they're in the streaming numbers are nothing to write home about.
Well, in streaming, I don't know. I guess I've always looked at streaming numbers as what's the total universe that can see this program.
Right.
Because once the game is on, it's there forever.
Right.
So is this a streaming number of the people who watched it live? Or is this a streaming number of every single person that's ever clicked on this game? So if I go back and watch something to get ready for our discussion, does that count me as 2 or 3 times?
Yeah,
so
that's a good point.
I guess I've always looked at that. Say there's 9 million people. There's 9 million subscriptions for ESPN Plus. We're making up a number. If they have 1 million total views, are they going to say 1 in 9 people who have ESPN Plus watch the XFL? I mean, you can, as you said, you can take these numbers and move them however you want to for the narrative you're trying to sell. But to me, unless you're, as an example, Ted Lasso, where you are only on Apple Plus and you're getting, making up a number, 40 million people viewing your episode each week, then that's something that show can take and monetize it.
Right.
But I'm not sure the XFL, say they come out and say 2 million people are watching it. I'm not sure where they go with that.
Yeah.
Like I'm not sure if that really means anything at the end of the day, like, because I don't know what that number is.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, also it was telling too when I was going through, the press reports, and I'm not a big Mike Mitchell fan at XFL News Hub at all, but I did read the article he wrote about the ratings, and different tone than every other article I've ever read of his. And much like Mr. Larson, there was a sense of reality setting in. This ain't looking good. So I'm happy to see Mike is actually not spinning like he normally does when it comes to the XFL. And I mean, you can be a cheerleader for the league all you want. I mean, we want the league to succeed, but we are obviously realists, and a real as one of my political science professors used to call it, real politic. The reality is what the reality is. And when I see XFL News Hub actually being critical of the XFL, I'm like, oh, okay, now it's serious, because that's a organization that's always been on, very much pro XFL, and they want to support the game and they want to support the league, and that's understandable. But now, but when you take a critical eye and you're going to say, okay, great, and it's nice to see them actually doing that. Now, how long they'll do that, I don't know, but the other thing too with the XFL, just talking about the media coverage, is there has been no media coverage. I'm over here in Japan, and this just tells you, because sometimes I got way too much time in my retirement here. I'll literally sit here again, have Japanese news on TV on, so I can watch pictures, but I can't understand what they're saying. So I'll just go through my phone and just type in different browsers and search engines, XFL news, XFL, and there is nothing being reported about the league anymore. It's just like crickets. And there used to be a time when you type in XFL news and XFL News Hub would pop up everywhere. I'm not even seeing that anymore. So are you seeing the same thing, or is it something? Because I'm in Japan, maybe it's something different I'm dealing with, or it's I don't know. What do you think?
The only thing I'm seeing is ESPN, and then the local beat reporters, I guess you would say, the cities that they're playing in. Like St. Louis has a good sports department for all of their outlets. So
St. Louis, they're doing actually a pretty good job of covering the Battlehawks.
But I mean, it's really that's it. It's XFL content, ESPN, and then the cities, if there's someone there who's covering it as a beat. But it's not, I mean, even the first and second iterations, you're getting articles from the New York Times, you're getting articles from the LA, you're getting articles from national outlets that just there's no teams in these markets, so there's no there's enough stuff to write about in their own local market that they're not going to risk this, or some editor is going to go, and you're going to write about what?
Yeah. And it's funny too, because I mean, again, I live in a completely different world, and we've got the X League over here, and I'm in my retirement here. I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? Well, nobody's covering the X League, and I got a little blog, I got a little podcast, earn zero money from it, but I like to write, and I like to do, at 55, I'm able to indulge in my 12-year-old hobbies again, and being able to write about stuff. And there's a lot of, and where I'm going with this is, sometimes I'll run across bloggers. There was one, I forget who, another podcaster just started up, wrote a very critical article, great article, but very critical about the CFL, about what needs to be done. And I go, this is what we need more of in the XFL. Independent voices, young voices saying, hey, you need to fix this, because especially the younger generation, they're more tuned in. I mean, you and I are tuned in, but let's face it, we're of an age now. I mean, we remember when there were only three channels on the TV. We're not as social media savvy. We're not as, I mean, I don't know how it is with you, but when I play, say Madden with the kids in my family, I get freaking torched. I can't keep up with them. So, So I guess what I'm saying is, I'm hopeful to see the younger generation maybe just step up and become, take it upon themselves, aspiring journalists. Hey, don't go work for pennies at some fan news organization. Do it write on your own, be your own writer, be your own voice, and hopefully for anybody aspiring to be in journalism. But that also brings up another point here is a lot of these news organizations, local journalism is going away, and we're seeing it die out. I mean, I still have a local paper. I don't know about you, but a lot of these local papers are dying out, and including in the big cities. I mean, I remember a time when Chicago, I think when I was born, there were 4 city dailies. Now there's only 2. And I remember when the Chicago Daily News closed down, how big of a deal that was. But, you get some cities. I mean, I was talking about somebody about in Vegas, in terms of their sports departments have been gutted out there. So, I get it why there's no coverage, but there's zero XFL coverage really anywhere that is independent and critical. And again, going back to what I was saying, it was nice to see both XFL Newsroom and XFL News Hub have something out there looking at the ratings going, yeah, these suck. This is not good. Something needs to change. But the question is anybody at the top listening? And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think anybody is. I think the people running the league are too worried about their own self-image at this point.
Looking at it also, it's like, if you're looking to create that discussion, then they should be reaching out to media outlets or newspapers or whoever, Sports Illustrated or something. But I guess when your attendance is not the best, your ratings aren't the best, it's going to be hard to go to Sports Illustrated or go to another national sports service, whether it's Barstool or somebody who has a viewership. I mean, it's not wrestling anymore, but if they really wanted to, they should have done a better job of harnessing in Pat McAfee.
Yeah.
And getting him, and I said, you can't make him get on board. That's the whole thing. It's just one of those things where, but if you don't have a good base at the beginning, it's hard to do that midstream and try and create it, because you can't expect that level of a journalist to not talk about attendance issues, not talk about rating issues, and just write an article saying, I've had sliced bread, this is better.
Yeah. Because, and then, I keep thinking, you just mentioned it about sitting down. I would love, if you remember, I remember vividly, and it's on YouTube, if I think it's still on YouTube, but that conversation with Bob Costas and Vince McMahon. That's the type of conversation I want to see Danny Garcia have with a legitimate news outlet. And it reminds me of the politicians, how polished they are and everything. There are some politicians that are really good at sitting down one-on-one. And again, I'm not throwing politics around. I don't like talking politics if I don't have to. But there's a difference when, a guy like Pete Buttigieg, when he sits down with Fox News, there's a real discussion. And again, I'm partial on this because I'm actually friends with Pete. I've known the man for years. Politics aside, he's a wonderful human being and somebody who I trust. But when he decided to go on Fox, he went in the Lion's Den and he handled it well. And that's what I'd like to see with Danny Garcia. Go sit down with somebody from somebody who doesn't have a vested interest in your league. And if that means you sit down, on ESPN, I wouldn't even consider, if ESPN has a vested interest, but sit down with, say, Bob Costas, say with, and one of the networks that has no skin in the game, and have the hard questions. And now, especially now, 5 weeks in, much like Costas did with McMahon, the attendance, the marketing. I'm curious if I don't think we're ever going to see that.
But I don't see the platform for them to do that. At the time, Costas had that nightly show, which was perfect. I'm going to start naming ones. You're not going to go on Colin Cowherd. I'm saying I'm walking through. Are you gonna is Real Sports with Brian Gumbel interested in this? Like it just I don't see the platform available that would either do them well or expose, like there's nobody out there. There's no go-to sit down.
Yeah,
we really don't have that. Like we have each platform has their own niche person.
We don't have, and we're dating ourselves here, but we don't have a Mike Wallace from 60 Minutes anymore in sports. We really don't. I love Dan Patrick. I think Dan Patrick could actually be the perfect person to sit down with. But again, first of all, they're never going to agree to go and talk with Dan Patrick because Dan Patrick's going to ask the hard questions. Because Dan Patrick, well, I mean, he is employed by NBC, obviously, in part. I mean, they do have him on, but hey, NBC was willing to let Costas sit down with Vince McMahon, and they were both at the time getting money from the same network for different reasons. And I was watching this was the XFL, and Costas indicated, he goes, basically that was done by NBC. He goes, I was surprised NBC allowed it to happen, but NBC needed to, at that point, NBC was losing credibility, and they went, well, we got to have, and they were just at that point, they were about ready to throw in the towel anyway. So, but yeah, they need to, the leadership needs to sit down. It's like with Randy Ambrosi in the CFL. I always have an issue with Randy Ambrosi. It seems like he gets softball questions all the time up north. And I have yet to see him sit down other than the time he sat, I forget, it was a parliamentary committee, but it had to do with money, and he was getting thrown hard questions. He couldn't answer them. And
go ahead. Sorry,
no. He couldn't. But you need to, when you're the head of an organization, the face of an organization, you need to be able to either answer the hard question or be able to turn to somebody and going, we need to get this question answered because I do not have it. We need to be able to get it answered. I mean, it's a military thing too. I've been briefed and been grilled. So, and I say that from personal experience because many times I've sat in a briefing room with, 1 and 2 stars. And it's a humbling experience when you don't know the answer to really a simple question that you should have known going in. And I'm not saying you got to play stump the chump with them, but again, nobody's asked even a hard question that that would be an easy fastball. It's a hard, easy fastball. They don't even get that thrown at them.
And I would say of all the commissioners, I would place Randy in the most difficult position because of how the ownership model of the CFL is in place. You have community, you have mega entertainment, and everything else in between.
Yeah.
And
it's so unlike the NFL. Yeah, you're right.
You have Roger Goodell, who's a united front. Basically, there's, of course, you don't have every owner, but as long as he has 24, he's going to have a job.
Yeah.
And I don't know how the CFL necessarily how this works, but I can't imagine Saskatchewan, Winnipeg are looking at the same decisions that Toronto is making on every issue. So I can't see BC going, ooh, a team in Halifax? This is fantastic.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
I'm curious on what Randy gets leeway in answering these questions because he's got different people in his ear going, we don't want this, we want this, you can't have this. It's just hard.
And also too, the CFL has a history of just not renewing. The commissioner's contract only runs for so long, and they're like, okay, we're not going to renew it. And they've had, in our lifetimes, I've lost count how many commissioners they've had. So, I agree with you there with the CFL.
Then there's a lot riding with this, with it Genesis, the whole way to connect and grow the league offline. Like saying, not so much on the game itself, but everything else. That it'll be really curious to see how this all comes into play and on how it grows. As long as it's growing in the States, as long as it's growing outside of Canada, even if it's incrementally, that's a good thing. because I think you're always going to have. This is how I'll equate it to the XFL. You're going to have that Canadian base that's always going to be there.
Right.
They're
Yeah.
just going to be there.
Yeah.
And then if you can sprinkle in enough, excuse me, of everywhere else, it's gonna keep growing. I mean, it's gonna keep chugging along. And
Yeah.
if you have 6 billionaires who want to spend money and do this, it seems like the community-owned teams are always making money. So it's one of those things where I would always like to see more, but more cost more. And I think they're a little leery on what's that return going to be.
Right.
Like, if I'm like the community manager of the Rough Riders and someone goes, look, for $500,000, we're going to be able to do this. Well, that's our profit from this year. Or we made $1 million and that's half our profit. I have to convince these shareholders to do this.
Right.
And there's nothing associated with that. That's going to, nothing's ever 100%, nothing's ever golden, but it's hard when people see the wheel and it's rolling down the road. Do I really need to change it, or do I need to tinker with it?
Yeah. Well, and that's what the old adage is: if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But with that said, we're entering in we're in a new age now where electronic all things digital matter. And, with the CFL, the one thing the XFL has over the CFL right now is the XFL has an app. I can go to the phone. I can check scores. With the CFL, and I don't know, I mean, I've moved, but my CFL app wasn't working back in the States on my phone. So it's these little things that all of us fans, I think, take for granted. I mean, we take for granted because the NFL has them. And to me, and I know it's you can't always compare, but the NFL has an app, the NHL, the MLB. If you're one of these minor leagues, and we'll call them minor leagues for this discussion, you've got to have digital interactivity and, outside, say, your Instagram, your Twitter, and your TikTok. You got to have guys like you and I. Hey, I want to go check my scores. Well, shit. Okay, where's my CFL app? Oh, go to TSN. Well, now I got to go download the TSN app. I mean, there's just so many steps involved. And it kind of goes back to talking about the streaming, about everybody's crowing about streaming. Anybody who's crowing about streaming, either they know exactly how to, because there's a maze you've got to go through to get to your game. For me, I've got to do a whole nother step with the VPN setup too, every time I log on. So the XFL is not making it easy really for anybody. And obviously, if their streaming numbers are great, I would have thought they would have at least hinted as, hey, they're really, really good. And maybe I'll go take a look at those press releases, and maybe I'm just misreading what's being put out, but I don't know. But even then, we're at a point now where perception is reality, and the perception now is this thing is just failing worse in a way than what the first iteration did. The only difference is the first one was such a public spectacle of failure. This is a failure nobody's really talking about now. And I was going round and round with somebody on Facebook right now about, he said, well, the XFL I go, no, the XFL has been around 22 years. No, it's only been around less than a season. I go, no, in the public's mind, the XFL has been around for 22 years. And the people equate the term XFL, there's that image of the XFL blimp deflating and falling. I mean, that's the image people still have. And then, outside of our echo chambers, our spring football, our football history echo chambers, and you and I both, we have, when we sit down with our regular, outside of our sports history group, I sit here and I got to explain sports history to my wife. I got to explain, even with the World Baseball Classic, which, by the way, is in the bottom of the 8th, and Japan is still winning. But I bored my wife to tears explaining to her why the Florida Marlins are now called the Miami Marlins and why they play at Lone Depot Park. And then I got then she started rolling her eyes started glazing over when I started talking about the history of what used to be there, the Orange Bowl. So, so outside our bubbles, nobody, I always say people equate the XFL with failure. Was it a failure in the sense that it went? Yeah, I mean, it again depends what side you're looking at. I mean, I look at it, you and I think kind of look at it. Yeah, well, it didn't fail maybe in the box office or even on the field. Without the XFL, we might not have Skycam. Without these other leagues that have failed, we might not have a lot of innovations that we have today. Though the World League of American Football, if you remember, had the helmet cam, and that just never quite caught on.
It was quite caught on. At the time, it was too clunky at the time.
It was, but technology. But I don't think really, Kitty, we don't have the helmet cam. I'm okay with that because I mean, you and I have both strapped helmets on in our youth, and there are times I watch people take hits on the field, and I'm like, yeah, I know that. Well, that looks painful. Oh, trust me, it is painful. So, so with that said, before we wrap up here, and again, we're going into the bottom of the eighth here. 2 outs. Japan is up, so we got a half inning left here before the celebrations hopefully begin here in Japan. But you after what happened yesterday with Mexico and everything, I mean, it ain't over till it's over. So, but before we wrap up, just real quickly, the games were all competitive. All the games were competitive. It was a good week. So hopefully going into this week, and that was a thing too on Reddit, people were complaining, well, they're not covering the games. No, well, I've told it, I mean, we did in our first episode going, we're focused on the business. We're talking outside the lines here. We're trying to look at what's being said in the media about the league and just cut through the spin. And that's something I think we've been able to do each episode. So for those who are listening and people that, listening to us for the first time, I apologize. We aren't talking about the games, but we're here to talk about the business and the future of the league. The players, the players are a huge part of the league. But unfortunately, with the way the business of football is, a lot of these guys that are playing this year may not be around next year. They might be in the NFL. They might be in the CFL. But for our purposes, at least for this initial season, I wanted to talk about the business because, listen, the players always play hard. The employees always work hard. But ultimately, in the end, it's the executives and the business planners that cause leagues like the XFL to fail. So that's why we're having these discussions and taking a critical look at the media. And, I don't like bashing on anybody, but it is, and I wouldn't say I've bashed really on anybody since we started this thing. I know I really do it pretty hard on Twitter, but it is nice to see now that the XFL media is starting to come to grips with reality because, if the league doesn't change its ways here, and we're at the midway point of the season, and about a week in a way, we're going to be at the midway point of the entire thing. Will there be a season 2? Yeah, there'll be a season 2. But the question is, will anybody care or be watching in season 2? So with all that said, Dave, I'm going to let you have the final word, and we will sign off from here, and I'll do play-by-play here in the final inning here of the World Baseball Classic before I let you go, after we hit the stop button.
Well, hopefully coming into this next week, we have another set of 4 competitive games. We're looking forward to see how everything comes across on ESPN Saturday afternoon and then ABC on Sunday afternoon. Typical football times, maybe not time of the year, but looking forward to some more competitive football. And as I said, there's good storylines with these players. I mean, I will by no means be giving what I believe would be credible breakdowns of these teams and what they're doing. There's many outlets that do that. That's not my strong suit.
Yeah.
But hopefully attendance is decent to good. I'm not. The big draws are on the road, so it'll be interesting to see what these teams are. Like you talked about Orlando. I'm curious if a competitive team in Orlando makes a difference. Even going back to the old USFL days, Orlando struggled because the team wasn't good.
Right.
And that's really some of the things. It's like we're expecting. I mean, Las Vegas won this past week, so that's great. They have one win,
Right.
but St. Louis is good. Seattle is good. So am I expecting Orlando and Vegas to win? No. San Antonio and Arlington should be could be one of the better games this weekend. Houston, DC will be good, but just playing back to back now, swapping out. It'll be interesting to see if things boil over from having to play the same team back to back weeks. So
right.
There's good storylines as things heat up for the playoffs.
Yeah, and this past week, all the games were close. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better slate of games. I mean, they were close really up until the end. And that's the thing about this league. The quality of football, as we've gone on, has been gotten better and better. And I sit there, I tune the games on in the morning here, and it's one of those things. The XFL, unlike the first version, and kind of the first version, the same thing too. It took a while for the games got better as time went on, and that's kind of where we're at now. And that's the thing with all these games, and even the announcers have gotten better. I mean, they're still homers for the league, but that's okay. They get paid by the league. I understand what their job and their purpose is, and but when it comes to the players and the team, all the games, it's worth watching. Anybody who is not watching the XFL really needs to watch it. But obviously there's a whole other side of it, and that's the side that's going to make or break this league. And that's the media side of it, the business side of it. And that's what Dave and I like to talk about, because like Dave said, we're not, we love sports, but man, I don't have the expertise to break down X's. I mean, I'm like you, I'm an armchair analyst. And, I mean, honestly, I can barely call the right plays in Madden. I can barely call the right plays in sim football. My opinion about how a guy does on the field for somebody who barely made the second string in high school, no. Though other guys can break that stuff down. They're better suited for us. But you and I mean, we're old guys. We're sports historians, and we like to, the business end of it is, to me, has always been the fascinating part of leagues like the XFL. And if you've ever gotten a shout out to Tim Hamlin with his show with Good Seats still available. If you're interested in hearing about defunct leagues, about the business of sports, his is really, it's kind of the gold standard of sports history podcasts, including all those over the Sports History Network, which I am on over at From the 55-Yard Line. And I mentioned earlier that I sat down with Kyle Smith with the USFL project. And we did talk spring ball over there. So, hey, with all that said, everybody, thank you very much for listening. And we will be talking to you next week. Goodbye.
Come on. Take a risk, damn it.
My foot was on the bag. It was glued to the goddamn bag. Right there. Right there. Well, all right, maybe there.
Fine. Deal with the chief.
Jackson, shut your big mouth. You are humiliating the team. Just play your position and stop all the bullshit right now. Please. Please.
You know, Mookie?
Yeah, I'm sorry. What I'm thinking here, one of the duties of a captain, and you're a fine one, don't get me wrong. But one of the things a captain does is find little ways to get the team, up, laughing. Get the boys' minds off their trouble and let them know it's okay. Loosen up a little. Baseball's a game. Games are supposed to be fun.
That means he didn't need it. I don't care if he ate his goddamn hat. I've had it. Bullshit.
I'm sick and tired of this shit. Haven't you heard a word I've said? You're really pissing me off now. Now just take your base and get with the program.
You too, huh, Max?
You know the one thing I didn't miss about playing in the States? Is putting up with hot shots like you. Now I don't even have that anymore. 本人が見つかり次第君にはやめてもらう。